The brass elevator doors slid open with a mechanical whisper on the 47th floor of the Whitmore building. Marcus Chun stepped forward, briefcase in hand, when suddenly his vision blurred. The packed elevator plummeted, cables snapping like guitar strings, bodies floating weightless for 3 terrifying seconds before impact. The screams echoed in his mind as he stumbled backward, gasping. The doors closed. His colleagues inside looked confused through the narrowing gap, unaware they were already dead. The Chicago morning air felt thick with diesel fumes and the distant rumble of the low train as Marcus stood frozen in the marble lobby of the Whitmore building. His hands trembled, clutching his leather briefcase so tight his knuckles had gone white. The vision replayed behind his closed eyelids, Sarah's terrified face as the elevator car dropped, the sickening sound of metal grinding against metal, the way everyone's bodies had seemed to float in those final moments before. "Marcus, you okay, buddy?" Tom Rodriguez emerged from behind the security desk, his weathered face creased with concern. The maintenance supervisor had worked in the building for over a decade, and nothing escaped his notice. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I'm fine," Marcus stammered, though his voice cracked on the words. The fluorescent lights above flickered momentarily, casting strange shadows across the polished floor. "Just felt dizzy for a second." Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, downtown Chicago buzzed with its usual morning chaos. Yellow cabs honked impatiently at pedestrians crossing against the light. Steam rose from manholes, creating ghostly wisps in the cool October air, and the Willis Tower loomed in the distance like a monolithic guardian. Everything seemed normal, yet Marcus felt as though he was viewing the world through cracked glass. "Maybe you should take the stairs today," Tom suggested, jangling his massive keyring. "Elevator's been making some weird noises lately. Nothing dangerous, mind you. Just different." The word dangerous sent ice through Marcus's veins. He glanced at the bank of elevators where a small crowd of employees waited, checking their phones and sipping coffee from paper cups. Sarah stood among them, her auburn hair catching the morning light streaming through the windows. She wore the navy blazer she bought last week, the one she'd been so excited about. In his vision, that same blazer had been torn and ... "No," Marcus whispered, then louder. "No, I need to warn them." He rushed toward the elevator bank, his dress shoes clicking urgently against the marble. The familiar ding announced an arriving car, and the doors began to part with that same mechanical whisper he'd heard in his vision. Sarah stepped forward with 3 other colleagues, Jim from accounting, the new receptionist whose name he couldn't remember, and Dr. Patel from the legal department. "Wait," Marcus called out, but the lobby acoustics swallowed his voice. The group entered the elevator, Sarah turning to wave at him with a smile. "Sarah, don't." The door sealed shut with a soft thud. Marcus watched the floor indicator above climb. 2, 5, 10, 15. Each number felt like a countdown to disaster. His chest tightened as sweat beaded on his forehead despite the building's aggressive air conditioning. The mechanical hum of the elevator shaft vibrated through the walls, a sound he'd never noticed before, but now seemed ominous, like the growl of some sleeping beast. 23 floors up, the numbers continued their relentless climb. Marcus found himself holding his breath, waiting for the lights to flicker, for alarms to blare, for screams to echo down the shaft. But the lobby remained peaceful, filled only with the quiet conversations of morning commuters and the soft jazz playing through hidden speakers. The elevator reached the 35th floor and stopped. Marcus exhaled slowly, his shoulders sagging with relief. Maybe he was losing his mind. Maybe the stress of the internship, the long hours, the pressure to prove himself had finally gotten to him. Premonitions weren't real. People didn't just see the future. But then he remembered the way the cables had looked as they snapped, not frayed or worn, but cut clean through, as if someone had taken a blade to them. And Sarah's face filled not just with terror, but with a strange recognition, as if she'd known this moment was coming. The elevator dinged again, and the doors opened. Sarah stepped out alone, looking perfectly normal, even cheerful. She spotted Marcus across the lobby and waved again before heading toward the coffee shop in the building's ground floor retail space. Relief flooded through him so powerfully that his legs nearly gave out. It had been his imagination, nothing more. A stress-induced hallucination brought on by too many late nights and too much caffeine. He almost laughed at his own paranoia. That's when he noticed Tom staring at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. The maintenance supervisor approached slowly, his work boots silent on the marble. "Son," Tom said quietly, "I've worked in this building a long time, seen a lot of strange things. Sometimes ... Sometimes people know things they shouldn't know." "You understand what I'm saying?" Marcus shook his head, but Tom continued. "My grandfather used to say that death casts a shadow before it arrives. Some people, they can see that shadow coming." He paused, glancing at the elevator bank. "The question is, what do you do with that kind of knowledge?" The October wind whipped through the Chicago streets with unusual ferocity, sending dried leaves skittering across the sidewalks like tiny, desperate hands. Marcus sat at his desk on the 23rd floor, staring out the window at the city below, but his mind kept drifting to the elevator shaft just beyond the office walls. Every mechanical sound, the hum of the vacay system, the distant ding of arriving cars, even the soft whir of the photocopier made him flinch. 3 days had passed since his vision, and nothing had happened. Sarah continued her daily routine, cheerfully greeting everyone in the morning, taking the same elevator to the same floor at the same time. But Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching a movie whose ending he already knew, and every normal moment felt like borrowed time. "Earth to Marcus," Sarah's voice cut through his reverie. She stood beside his desk, holding 2 cups of coffee from the shop downstairs. "You've been staring at that window for 10 minutes. The pigeons aren't that interesting. Trust me." She looked vibrant in the afternoon light filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows, her skin glowing with health, her eyes bright with the kind of enthusiasm that made her such an effective mentor. It seemed impossible that someone so alive could be walking toward their death. "Thanks," Marcus said, accepting the coffee. The ceramic mug was warm against his palms, and he wrapped his fingers around it like an anchor to reality. Just thinking about ... work stuff. "Well, think about this instead," Sarah said, settling into the chair beside his desk. "I got word that Whitmore himself might visit our floor next week. This could be huge for your internship, maybe even lead to a full-time position after graduation." The coffee tasted bitter, despite the cream and sugar Sarah had added. Marcus forced a smile, but his attention drifted to the elevator bank visible through the glass partition separating his cubicle from the main hallway. A group of employees waited for the next car, their conversations muffled by the office's sound-dampening materials. "That's great," he said, though his voice sounded hollow even to himself. Sarah studied his face with the intensity she usually reserved for marketing campaigns. "Okay, what's really going on? You've been weird all week. Distracted, jumpy, and don't think I haven't noticed you taking the stairs everywhere. I'm fine." "No, you're not." She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Is it family stuff? Money problems? You know you can talk to me, right?" The elevator dinged in the distance, and Marcus's head snapped toward the sound. Through the glass, he watched the doors slide open, revealing the familiar brass interior. A maintenance worker emerged, pushing a cart loaded with cleaning supplies. Everything looked normal, routine, safe. "It's nothing like that," Marcus said finally. "I just ... Have you ever had a feeling that something bad was going to happen? Like, really bad?" Sarah's expression softened. "Oh, honey, is this about the presentation next Friday? Because I promise, even if you completely bomb it, which you won't, it's not the end of the world." Before Marcus could respond, Tom Rodriguez appeared at the edge of their cubicle. The maintenance supervisor looked uncharacteristically serious, his usual easy smile replaced by a tight line. "Excuse me, folks," Tom said, his voice carrying an odd tension. "I need to talk to Marcus for a minute." Sarah glanced between them, clearly puzzled. "Is everything okay?" "Just some routine stuff," Tom replied, but his eyes never left Marcus's face. "Building safety protocols. Nothing to worry about." Marcus felt his stomach drop. He followed Tom to a quiet corner near the emergency stairwell, where the older man pulled out a tablet and showed him a series of photographs. "These are from the elevator shaft inspection I did this morning," Tom said quietly. "Look at the cables on elevator car number 3. The images showed the thick steel cables that supported the elevator. Marcus had never paid attention to such technical details before, but even to his untrained eye, something looked wrong. The cables appeared to be under stress, with several thin strands beginning to fray. How long before? Marcus couldn't finish the question. Hard to say, could be weeks, could be days, maybe less. Tom swiped to another image. But here's the strange part. This kind of wear doesn't happen overnight. These cables have been deteriorating for a while, but our monthly inspections showed nothing until today. It's like the damage just appeared. Can you fix it? Already put in the work order. New cables should arrive tomorrow, and we'll replace them over the weekend. Tom put away the tablet. But Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. The October afternoon was fading outside the office windows, and the building's interior lights had automatically brightened to compensate. In the artificial illumination, Tom's face looked older, more weathered than usual. When you had that episode on Monday morning, what exactly did you see? Marcus hesitated. Admitting to supernatural premonitions felt ridiculous in the sterile environment of a modern office building. But the fraying cables in the photographs made his vision feel more real, more urgent. I saw the cables snap, he said finally. Car number 3. It fell with people inside. Tom nodded slowly, as if this confirmed something he'd already suspected. And these people, did you recognize any of them? Sarah was there, and some others from my floor. When? I don't know. Soon, I think. Marcus felt cold despite the building's warmth. Tom, what if I can't stop it? What if knowing about it doesn't change anything? The maintenance supervisor was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the Chicago skyline. The Willis Tower's lights were beginning to twinkle in the gathering dusk, and somewhere far below, traffic moved through the streets like blood through arteries. My grandfather used to tell me stories about the old country, Tom said finally, about people who could see death coming. He said the trick wasn't to fight fate directly, that just makes it angry. The trick is to be smarter than it is. To find the loopholes? What kind of loopholes? But before Tom could answer, Sarah appeared at Marcus's elbow, slightly out of breath from hurrying across the office. There you are, she said. I've been looking everywhere. We need to head downstairs for the client meeting. The elevator's waiting. Through the glass partition, Marcus could see the open elevator doors. Car number 3. The brass interior gleamed under the fluorescent lights, looking deceptively safe and normal. Several colleagues were already inside, checking their phones and adjusting their jackets. I'll take the stairs, Marcus said quickly. Don't be silly. It's 23 floors. Sarah grabbed his arm. Come on, we'll be late. Tom caught Marcus's eye and gave an almost imperceptible shake of his head. The cables wouldn't be fixed until the weekend. It was only Wednesday afternoon. Sarah, Marcus said, his voice stronger now. Let's take the stairs, please. The emergency stairwell of the Whitmore building smelled of concrete dust and industrial disinfectant, a sharp contrast to the polished corporate atmosphere of the office floors. Marcus's dress shoes echoed against the metal steps as he and Sarah descended, their conversation bouncing off the painted cinder block walls. I still don't understand why you're being so weird about elevators, Sarah said, slightly breathless as they reached the 15th floor landing. Did something happen? Are you claustrophobic now? It's complicated. Marcus gripped the metal handrail, his knuckles white with tension. Through the narrow windows in the stairwell, he could see the Chicago skyline growing larger as they descended. I just think it's good exercise. 23 floors of exercise is called punishment, not fitness. Sarah paused on the landing, adjusting her heels. Seriously, Marcus, this is getting concerning. First you're spacing out all week. Now you won't use basic building infrastructure. Are you having some kind of breakdown? The question hung in the air between them like an accusation. Marcus continued down the stairs, counting each step to keep his mind occupied. 18 floors to go. 17. 16. With each level they passed, he felt a strange mixture of relief and growing dread. They were avoiding the elevator, which was good. But for how long could he keep this up? There's something I need to tell you, he said when they reached the 10th floor. The words came out before he could stop them, driven by a desperate need to share the burden of his knowledge. Sarah stopped walking and turned to face him. In the harsh fluorescent lighting of the stairwell, she looked tired, worried. The shadows under her eyes were more pronounced than usual, and Marcus realized she'd been working late every night this week, probably covering for his distracted behavior. I'm listening. What if I told you I could see things before they happened? Would you believe me? Honestly? No. Her response was immediate but not unkind. But I believe that you believe it, and that's what matters. Through the stairwell window, Marcus could see the rush of evening traffic beginning to build on the streets below. Office workers emerged from buildings like streams of ants, heading toward train stations and parking garages. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that death might be lurking in something as ordinary as an elevator ride. I saw you die, he said quietly. Sarah blinked, clearly taken aback. I'm sorry, what? Monday morning, when I freaked out at the elevator, I had a vision. I saw you and several other people fall when the cable snapped. It felt real, more real than anything I've ever experienced. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant hum of the building's mechanical systems. Sarah studied his face with the careful attention she usually reserved for analyzing market research data. Marcus, she said finally, I think you need to talk to someone. A professional, I mean. This level of anxiety isn't normal. Tom Rodriguez confirmed it. The words tumbled out in a rush. The maintenance supervisor. He inspected the elevator cables today, and they're deteriorating. Car number 3, exactly like I saw in the vision. He's replacing them this weekend, but until then, until then what? We're supposed to live our lives around your hallucination. The word hallucination hit him like a physical blow. It wasn't a hallucination. Then what was it? Sarah's voice rose slightly, echoing off the concrete walls. Divine prophecy? Supernatural powers? Come on, Marcus. Listen to yourself. They resumed walking, but the atmosphere between them had shifted. Marcus felt the weight of her skepticism like a stone in his chest. He couldn't blame her. If someone had told him the same story a week ago, he would have reacted the same way. At the 5th floor, Sarah's phone buzzed. She checked the message and frowned. The client meeting has been moved to the conference room on the 40th floor, she said. There's no way I'm climbing back up 35 flights of stairs. Marcus felt his mouth go dry. Can't we reschedule? Are you kidding? This is the Hensley account. They're worth $3 million annually. She started back up the stairs. Look, I appreciate your concern, really, but I'm taking the elevator, and you can either join me or explain to Whitmore why you missed the biggest meeting of your internship. The choice felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. Follow Sarah and risk the vision coming true, or let her go alone and live with the guilt if something happened. Either way, He was gambling with lives. They climbed back to the 23rd floor in tense silence. The office was quieter now, with many employees having left for the day. The elevator bank waited at the end of the hallway, 3 sets of brass doors reflecting the overhead lighting. "Sarah, please," Marcus said one last time. "What if I'm right? What if something really is going to happen?" She pressed the call button. The mechanical whir of approaching cables filled the air, a sound that now made Marcus's skin crawl. "Ben, we'll deal with it when it happens," she said. "But I'm not going to live my life in fear of what if." The elevator dinged, and the doors slid open. Car number 2. Marcus felt a momentary relief until he realized that fate might simply be adjusting its timeline. The vision showed car number 3. But what if he'd altered the sequence of events? What if trying to avoid destiny had only rearranged it? "Coming?" Sarah asked, stepping into the elevator. Marcus looked at the cables visible through the small gap at the top of the car. They seemed solid, reliable. But so had the ones in Tom's photographs until the morning inspection revealed the truth. "Yeah," he said, stepping inside. "I'm coming." As the doors closed behind them, Marcus caught a glimpse of Tom Rodriguez at the far end of the hallway. The maintenance supervisor stood perfectly still, watching the elevator bank with an expression of deep concern. In his hand, Marcus could see the tablet containing the photographs of the fraying cables. The elevator began to rise, carrying them toward the 40th floor and the meeting that might determine Marcus's future. But all he could think about was the sound the cables made in his vision as they snapped like guitar strings, breaking under too much tension, followed by 3 seconds of weightless silence before the final, terrible impact. Outside the elevator's small window, the Chicago skyline sparkled in the gathering dusk, beautiful and oblivious to the small human dramas playing out in the buildings below. The conference room on the 40th floor of the Whitmore building commanded a breathtaking view of downtown Chicago. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the city's geometric sprawl, where lights were beginning to twinkle in the gathering October twilight. But Marcus couldn't focus on the scenery or the important presentation Sarah was giving to the Hensley Industries executives. His attention kept drifting to the subtle vibrations he could feel through the building's steel frame, the constant movement of the elevator system that now seemed less like modern convenience and more like a mechanical heartbeat counting down to disaster. "Our third-quarter projections show a 15% increase in market penetration," Sarah was saying, her voice confident and professional as she clicked through slides on her laptop. The 3 Hensley executives, 2 men in expensive suits and a woman with steel-gray hair, nodded approvingly from across the polished conference table. Marcus sat at Sarah's right hand, ostensibly there to provide support and take notes. But his mind kept wandering to the elevator shaft just beyond the conference room's wall. Every few minutes, he could hear the distant ding of arriving cars, the whisper of opening doors, the muffled conversations of employees heading home for the evening. Each sound made his stomach clench with anxiety. His phone buzzed with a text message from Tom Rodriguez. "Cables worse than expected. Shutting down car number 3 immediately. Other cars safe until weekend maintenance." Relief flooded through Marcus so powerfully that his shoulders sagged. Sarah noticed his change in posture and shot him a questioning look, but he gave her a subtle thumbs-up signal. The immediate danger was over. Car number 3 was out of service, which meant the vision couldn't come true, at least not in the way he'd seen it. "The demographic analysis is particularly encouraging," Sarah continued, seemingly oblivious to Marcus's internal drama. "We're seeing strong adoption rates across all age groups, but especially in the 25 to 40 segment. The presentation was going well. The Hensley executives asked intelligent questions and seemed genuinely interested in the marketing strategy Sarah had developed. This was exactly the kind of high-profile success that could launch Marcus's career. And under normal circumstances, he would have been taking careful notes and preparing thoughtful follow-up questions. Instead, He found himself studying the conference room's emergency exits. There were two: the main door they'd entered through, which led to the elevator bank, and a secondary door that connected to the emergency stairwell. The stairwell seemed infinitely safer now, despite the 40-floor descent it would require. "Mr. Chun?" The gray-haired executive was looking at him expectantly. "Ms. Williams mentioned you've done some interesting analysis on consumer engagement patterns. Would you care to share your insights?" Marcus blinked, realizing he'd completely missed his cue. Sarah's presentation had apparently reached the section where he was supposed to contribute his research on social media analytics. He glanced at his laptop, where the relevant slides were waiting, but his mind felt foggy, disconnected from the professional environment around him. Yes, of course," he stammered, opening his laptop. "The data show some fascinating trends in how different demographics interact with branded content." He launched into his prepared remarks about click-through rates and engagement metrics, but part of his attention remained focused on the building's subtle sounds. The Vivek system hummed steadily, punctuated by the occasional creak of the steel frame adjusting to temperature changes. These were normal building noises, but after a week of hypervigilance, every sound seemed potentially ominous. 20 minutes later, Sarah was shaking hands with the Hensley executives, all smiles and professional confidence. The meeting had been a success, despite Marcus's distracted performance. As the clients gathered their materials and prepared to leave, Sarah caught Marcus's eye and nodded toward the door. "Excellent work, both of you," said the senior Hensley executive. "We'll have a decision by Friday, but I can tell you informally that we're very impressed." The group moved toward the conference room door, but as they reached the hallway, Marcus noticed something that made his blood run cold. Despite Tom's text message about shutting down car number 3, all 3 elevator call buttons were illuminated. Through the small windows in the elevator doors, he could see that all 3 cars were in operation. "I thought car 3 was out of service," he said to Sarah in a low voice. "What are you talking about?" She replied, then raised her voice to address the Hensley group. "The elevators are right this way." One of the male executives pressed the call button, and within moments, a soft ding announced an arriving car. The doors slid open, revealing the familiar brass interior. Marcus tried to see which car it was, but the number placard was positioned where he couldn't read it from his angle. "After you," the executive said, gesturing for Sarah to enter first. Marcus felt time slow to a crawl. This was the moment from his vision, or something very close to it. The same time of day, the same group of people, the same building. The only difference was the specific mix of individuals, but fate had a way of making adjustments. "Actually," Marcus said quickly, "I need to make a quick stop at my desk. Sarah, why don't you see our guest down, and I'll catch up with you later." Sarah frowned. "Don't be silly. Your desk can wait 5 minutes." The Hensley executives were already entering the elevator, their conversations about dinner plans and flight schedules echoing off the brass walls. Sarah stepped toward the open doors, her navy blazer, the same one from his vision, catching the overhead lighting. "Sarah, wait." Marcus grabbed her arm, probably harder than he intended. "Please, something's wrong." "What is wrong is that you reacting like a crazy person in front of our most important clients," she hissed, pulling her arm free. "Get in the elevator, now." The doors began their slow close, and Marcus faced an impossible choice. Step into what might be a death trap, or let Sarah go alone and live with the consequences. Through the narrowing gap between the doors, he could see the Hensley executives checking their phones, oblivious to any danger. At the last second, Marcus lunged forward, squeezing through the closing doors just as they sealed shut. He found himself pressed against Sarah in the cramped space, his heart hammering so hard he was sure everyone could hear it. The elevator began to descend with its familiar mechanical hum. Marcus tried to see the car number, but from inside, the placard wasn't visible. The floor indicator above the doors showed their progress. 39, 38, 37. Everything seemed normal. The conversation continued about restaurant recommendations and airport traffic. Sarah gave him a look that clearly said they would be having a serious discussion about his behavior later. The elevator descended smoothly, efficiently, safely. At the 32nd floor, Marcus began to relax. Maybe his intervention had worked. Maybe shutting down car number 3 really had prevented the disaster. Maybe fate wasn't as inexorable as he'd feared. Then he heard it, a sound like a guitar string snapping under too much tension, followed by a second of absolute silence. The elevator shuddered once, almost imperceptibly, before continuing its descent. But now Marcus knew. Despite Tom's assurances, despite the precautions and warnings, they were in car number 3. And somewhere above them, the cables were beginning to fail. The elevator continued its descent past the 25th floor, but Marcus could feel something fundamentally wrong in the way it moved. The descent wasn't quite smooth anymore. There was a subtle hesitation in the car's motion, like a heart skipping beats. The conversations around him continued normally. The Hensley executives discussed their dinner reservations at Gibson's Bar and Steakhouse, and Sarah responded to emails on her phone. No one else seemed to notice the almost imperceptible irregularities in their descent. Marcus pressed himself against the back wall of the elevator, his palms sweating despite the building's air conditioning. Through the small gap at the top of the car, he could glimpse the elevator shaft racing past concrete and steel beams illuminated by sparse work lights. Somewhere above them, he knew, steel cables were unraveling strand by strand. Floor 20, announced the calm, automated voice of the building system. The sound made Marcus flinch. In his vision, they had been around the 20th floor when the cables finally gave way completely. He tried to calculate how much time they had left, maybe 30 seconds, maybe less. The elevator car felt like a coffin descending into the earth. "Marcus, you're sweating," Sarah observed quietly, moving closer to him. "Are you okay? You look like you're going to be sick." Before he could answer, the elevator shuddered again, more noticeably this time. The senior Hensley executive, a man named Patterson, looked up from his phone with mild concern. "Building maintenance issue?" Patterson asked conversationally. "These old Chicago high-rises can be quirky." "The Whitmore building is actually quite modern," Sarah replied, though Marcus could hear a note of uncertainty creeping into her voice. "Built in 1998 with state-of-the-art systems. Floor 18, floor 17. Marcus closed his eyes and tried to think. In every story he'd ever heard about premonitions and destiny, there was always a way to change the outcome. The future wasn't set in stone. It was a probability that could be altered with the right actions. But what actions could he take trapped in a descending elevator? "Emergency stop," he said suddenly. "What?" Sarah looked at him with growing alarm. "The emergency stop button." Marcus pointed to the red button behind a small glass cover near the floor selector. "We need to stop the elevator. Are you insane?" Sarah grabbed his wrist as he reached toward the button. "We have clients with us. You can't just randomly stop an elevator because you're having anxiety." Patterson and his colleagues were staring now, their professional politeness strained by the obvious tension between Marcus and Sarah. The elevator car seemed to be getting smaller, the brass walls closing in like the sides of a trash compactor. Floor 15. Floor 14. "Listen to me," Marcus said urgently, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I know this sounds crazy, but we need to get out of this elevator right now. The cables are failing." The Hensley executives exchanged glances. The woman, whose name Marcus couldn't remember, took a small step backward as if he might be dangerous. "Son," Patterson said carefully, "I think you might be having some kind of panic attack. Let's just get to the lobby, and then you can." The elevator lurched violently, dropping about 6 inches before the emergency brakes engaged with a grinding screech of metal on metal. Everyone stumbled, grabbing for handholds as the car swayed slightly in the shaft. Emergency lighting flickered on, bathing everything in a red glow that made the brass walls look like they were stained with blood. In the sudden silence that followed, Marcus could hear his own heartbeat and the frightened breathing of the other passengers. Sarah's face had gone pale, and even Patterson looked shaken. "Okay," Sarah said quietly. "Maybe we should press that emergency button." But before anyone could move, the building's intercom system crackled to life. Tom Rodriguez's voice filled the elevator car, distorted by static but unmistakably urgent. "This is building maintenance. We have a critical situation with elevator car number 3. If anyone is currently in car 3, please respond immediately." Patterson fumbled for the emergency call button, his earlier composure completely gone. "This is car 3, he shouted. "We're between floors 14 and 15. How many passengers?" Tom's voice came back immediately. "5 of us. Listen carefully. Do not, I repeat, do not attempt to move or force the doors. The cables are compromised, and any sudden motion could cause catastrophic failure. We have emergency crews on the way, but I need everyone to stay absolutely still." Floor 13 showed on the indicator, though they hadn't felt the car move. Marcus realized the counter was malfunctioning, probably due to the cable damage. They were suspended somewhere in the shaft, held in place by emergency brakes, and whatever cable strands remained intact. "How long until help arrives?" Sarah called out, though her voice was steady and professional despite the circumstances. "Fire department ETA's 12 minutes. We're also bringing in specialized equipment from the elevator company." Tom paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was gentler. "I know this is scary, but the emergency systems are designed for exactly this situation. Just stay calm and don't move around more than necessary." The Hensley woman, Marcus thought her name might be Jennifer, had tears streaming down her face. "I have a daughter," she whispered. "She's only 8 years old." Patterson put a comforting hand on her shoulder. "We're going to be fine," he said, though his own voice shook slightly. "This is just a mechanical problem. Modern buildings have multiple safety systems." Marcus wanted to tell him about his vision, about the 3 seconds of weightlessness followed by impact, but he realized it would only make things worse. Instead, he found himself thinking about time and probability. His vision had shown the cables snapping completely, sending them into freefall. But that hadn't happened yet. The emergency brakes had engaged. The building's safety systems had responded as designed. Maybe fate wasn't about the specific details of death, but about the broader pattern. Maybe his role wasn't to prevent the disaster entirely, but to change how it unfolded. "Tom," Marcus called out to the intercom, "in your inspection of the cables, did you find any evidence of sabotage? Or was this normal wear and tear?" There was a long pause before Tom responded. "Why do you ask?" "Because I think someone wanted this to happen. And I think we might not be the only ones in danger." As if summoned by his words, the lights in the elevator flickered once, twice, then went out completely, leaving them suspended in absolute darkness 13 floors above the ground. The darkness in elevator car 3 was complete and suffocating, broken only by the faint glow of cell phone screens as the passengers tried to make sense of their situation. Emergency lighting should have remained active, but even that had failed, leaving them suspended in what felt like a metal coffin hanging by threads over an abyss. "Tom!" Sarah called out to the intercom. The lights just went out. Static crackled through the speaker system, followed by Tom's voice, tense with urgency. "I'm showing a complete electrical failure in car 3. The emergency power systems aren't responding. This isn't part of the cable failure. Someone's interfering with the building systems." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the building's air conditioning. In the pale glow of phone screens, he could see the terrified faces of his fellow passengers. Patterson was trying to maintain his composure, but his hand shook as he held his phone. The Hensley woman, Jennifer, he remembered now, was quietly praying in Spanish. "What do you mean someone's interfering?" Sarah asked, though Marcus could hear in her voice that she already suspected the answer. "I'm in the main control room," Tom replied. "Someone with administrative access has been systematically overriding our safety protocols. First, they accelerated the cable wear on Car 3. Then they disabled the emergency systems.